Jack Shabrowski here. Let's talk about the new product strategic planning process. This is basically the framework that we're going to be using for the course. And so I think it's important that we start off the course by at least talking about this process and understanding what the steps are that are involved. All right, so here is a schematic of the new product strategic planning process. And you'll notice that it's got new product process steps in the middle. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 steps. And it also then talks about the situation analysis, which is part of the market opportunity analysis. It talks about setting goals. It talks about tactical action plans, and it talks about evaluating the commercialization of any new product. On the other side of this, of course, we have the strategy development for any new product. And then finally, we have the implementation issues. So to break this down, let's look at each of these areas separately. Let's start with the situation analysis, which is a key element for every market opportunity analysis, and it's something that you should have learned about in any previous marketing class that you've taken, the concept of doing a situation analysis. The situation analysis includes looking at the company itself and its abilities to be successful in this particular market, but also does it have the resources necessary to be successful with any new product development idea that we might have. Second on this list, of course, is the industry analysis, and we're going to spend some time talking about the industry analysis. I like to refer to the industry analysis as sort of the rules of the game, understanding how the industry works, understanding what it takes to be successful in an industry, and understanding the basic rules of that industry. We also need to understand our customers. Obviously, marketing believes that understanding customers and the marketing concept are essential for any new product development. So we do need to have a complete understanding of customers in terms of their wants and needs, but also in terms of how many customers there are and the likelihood that we might attract customers away from competitors. And then speaking of competitors, it's important that we be able to do a competitor analysis. The competitor analysis includes, of course, defining who the competitors are, and in some cases that's more complicated than others, and then evaluating those competitors in terms of our ability to compete with them for customers. And then, of course, the last stage of the situation analysis is perhaps the most complicated. It's the macro analysis. It's the understanding of all those things other than the company itself, the industry, customers, and competition that might affect how successful our organization is. You recall not too long ago in 2020 when the coronavirus pandemic hit, we suddenly had a whole bunch of new macro issues that made it almost impossible for some companies to be successful, but created new opportunities for others. This situation analysis, of course, is all summarized in what is referred to as a SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunity, threat analysis. Next, we talk about setting goals. And we're going to spend some time talking about setting SMART goals. Okay, we're going to talk about goal setting and being realistic in terms of how successful we think a new product might be. I have a really good example with the impending high-speed bullet train that is scheduled to go from Los Angeles, or more specifically Rancho Cucamonga, to Las Vegas. And so we're going to take a look at setting goals and understanding the forecasting issues associated with that. Then we're going to talk about strategic decisions, the strategy. We have a new product idea. We think it's a good idea. We've done a market opportunity analysis and decided that this is a go. Then the question is, how do we proceed? We're going to discuss generic competitive strategies. We're going to discuss positioning issues. And of course, positioning is one of the most important aspects of all marketing strategy and all marketing success. We're going to look at target markets, target for target, markets for markets, target markets. And then we're going to look at how we are going to manage the 4Ps as part of the strategy. And of course, the 4Ps are the traditional aspects of any marketing operation. It is product issues, it is pricing issues, it is promotional issues, and it is place or distribution issues. And of course, those things change over time, and they change in some cases relatively quickly in terms of what is successful and what we need to do to give our new product the best strategic setup to be successful. And then, of course, the strategy then leads into the tactical action plans that are associated with the strategy. And of course, the tactical action plans are what, who, when, where, those sorts of things. It's the specific things that we are going to do to implement this new product and make it successful. So we're going to be looking at product tactics and activities. For instance, those might be modifications to the product, or even some things as simply some simple details such as added features or other related ideas associated with design elements of the product. We're going to be talking about pricing tactics, introductory tactics versus long-term pricing tactics. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about distribution. Of course, now with the internet, distribution and promotional tactics might be different than they previously were, and the way that we sell products might be different than they originally were. You remember, it wasn't all that long ago, maybe 15 years ago or 10 years ago, that Amazon really wasn't much of an issue. Today, Amazon, of course, is one of the great ways for any company to be able to distribute their products. Then we're going to talk about implementation decisions and issues in terms of resources necessary, responsibility, timelines. How are we going to implement a new product rollout? That is, how are we going to make it available to customers in a timely and efficient way? Then, of course, once we launch a new product, there's the issue of evaluating the success of the new product introduction in terms of metrics, deviations from our goals that we have set, successes and failures along the way, and if the product is successful, what are the key elements for that success? Or if the product is not as successful as we had hoped, what are the factors that are causing it not to be as successful? And then, of course, we have the steps associated with the new product development process. And remember, there were 8 of these steps. And of course, we're all familiar with these. The first step is idea generation. That is, we can generate new ideas creatively all day long, but many of them will not pass basic screening concepts in terms of whether or not we can actually produce them, and can we in fact produce them at a price, at a cost and a price that will make the product viable. We have to do some concept testing. This is typically a way for us to enhance the screening and look at it from a more market-driven approach. Then we need the business analysis. And the business analysis is part of the market opportunity analysis, obviously. It has to do with how competitive are we going to be? Which customers are we going to try to attract? What are the industry issues associated with being successful? And internal issues in terms of the company's ability to produce and market and compete in this particular industry. The last 4, well, there's product development. That is, as we look in and we move along further and further, what is the best possible way for us to develop this product? And of course, this ties back into some of the strategic decisions that we have to make. In terms of product development, how many versions of the product do we have? How many models, how many SKUs, all those sorts of things. And what is going to be the difference among those SKUs? These are typical product development issues. We're going to need to talk about test marketing. Of course, you're all familiar with this favorite line of, will we be able to sell it in Peoria? Peoria, Illinois, of course, was one of the traditional test markets. Today, a more likely test market would be Green Bay, Wisconsin, for a number of reasons. And we'll talk about some test marketing decisions that have to be made. And then, of course, there's the commercialization. This is the actual things that we have to do and have in place to actually launch the new product and join the competitive fray for customers. And then, of course, the last stage of this is to immediately start to watch the specific data to see if our assumptions are correct and to see if our product is progressing the way that we thought it would. And if not, what are the symptoms and causes and what can we do about that? Now, in this class, because we're talking about a 5-week class, we're going to be focusing on a few of the steps that I think are the most important. Idea generation, market opportunity analysis, and then product development and commercialization. And so the idea generation is the whole concept of coming up with new ideas. The market opportunity analysis is our ability to evaluate those opportunities, determine which ones might be successful and which ones are probably not good ideas. And then there's all of the strategic marketing aspects of developing the product and launching it. So those are to be the focus of most of our class. In summary, the new product development process is a multi-phased, multi-aspect process. And we're going to try to break it down into some simple steps so that all of you, when we get done, will be professional new product evaluators. So let's have some fun.